Good evening, everyone. It's so wonderful to be here. This is one of our first large events as we hopefully continue to move forward through a cycle of COVID that we hope is waxing and waning. I'm Sion Bialak, president of Barnard, and it's just really fantastic to be here tonight to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Title IX, Women's History Month, our women's basketball team that will be playing right after this. And the Columbia-Barnard Athletic Consortium, which is truly a unique arrangement between Barnard and Columbia that has produced such amazing athletes, and we're so excited tonight to hear from many of them. So this is our third iteration of Beyond the Game, and it's both the other iterations, I think, happened pre-pandemic, so it's wonderful to come in person and be here together. And it's really an excellent way to celebrate our unique relationship. Barnard is, if you don't know, a very special place. I think there's nowhere in the world that really focuses on women's intellectual leadership, has such a great partner in Columbia University, and then both institutions have, I would argue, the best campus in the world, which is New York City. And one of the things that really made Barnard even more unique was the ability for our students to play Division I athletics as Columbia Lions. But our students, even before they played Division I athletics, were great Barnard Bears, and I think we have some of those alums in the audience tonight, so I welcome our Barnard Bears as well as our Columbia Lions. And you're going to hear tonight from a variety of different women about their experience playing at Barnard and Columbia and athletics at large. And I think one theme that's going to come out is how special athletics is to their lives and to so many of our lives. And as a former athlete myself, I can say some of my wins and, of course, my losses on the playing field really shaped who I am today. So it's really special to see that. One of the other things I love about our student athletes is they're students as well as athletes. And speaking of our women's basketball team, I'm really proud to say that two of the women playing on the team, one from Barnard and one at Columbia, work in my research lab at Barnard, which is just great. It's great to see that. So happy to have that. So I hope everyone will come over after the panel to the game and help cheer on our athletes. And again, I couldn't be more excited to have you all here tonight to come together to celebrate athletics at Barnard and Columbia, the consortium, and to do that, and someone who's really been a partner with me in this endeavor. I'm pleased to introduce our Director of Athletics, Peter Pilling.
Thank you, Sion. It's great to be here. It's so awesome to see our student athletes present. This is an incredible partnership. If you look back how it's developed over the last 4 or 5 years since Sion's been here, we are up to 60 student athletes from Barnard that represent a majority of our women's sports. And we're so grateful for the partnership we have with Barnard and the experiences that they have as part of our Division I program and the uniqueness we have with the consortium. So, Sion, thank you for your leadership, for all that you do with that. And we're thankful for our student athletes for how they represent Barnard and our institution. So appreciate all that they do. And we're excited about the game tonight. If you were at the BC game the other day, we ended up taking the lead with about 6 seconds to go. We're hoping for a bigger lead throughout the game, and so that we don't provide any heart attack experiences for anybody else tonight. But we're grateful for Megan Griffith and her incredible leadership, and I know she wishes she were here tonight, and she's thankful that the support that she's had throughout the season. So it's now my pleasure to introduce the CEO of the WNBA New York Liberty, Keon Clark, and I'll say a few things about Keon. Keon has been with the Liberty, this is your 12th season, as I recall, and you've been the CEO since July of 2020. She has an incredible background in sports and specifically in basketball. She worked for the NBA and WNBA offices in their Team Boat division, which it was really kind of a landmark unit that was developed through the WNBA and the NBA offices to really kind of integrate with the professional teams and help market and promote the institutions. Kia has been instrumental in terms of the development of the Liberty and what they've done. State-of-the-art program with the YES Network, which she's done from the television standpoint, and has done incredible things. And we're grateful that she's here with us. She has an undergraduate degree from Canisius College, where she was a member of the women's basketball basketball team for 4 seasons and also has a master's in sports business from NYU. So please join me in welcoming Kia Clark.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much, Peter. At this time, I would love to invite the esteemed panelists to join me here for tonight's discussion on stage. All right. I think we can jump right in here. To my immediate right is Philippa Portnoy, Barnard College 86, MBA from Columbia Business School 90. Philippa was a tennis player as both a Barnard Bear and a Columbia Lion. That's right. In the inaugural season and the inaugural class of Barnard athletes under the Columbia-Barnard Athletic Consortium. She is co-founder of LaunchBreak, a personalized job search prep platform for young adults. Welcome.
Thank you.
Next, we have Lisa Carnoy. Lisa, Columbia College 89, Harvard University MBA 1994, former sprinter on the Columbia Lions track and field team, co-chair of Columbia University Board of Trustees, and chief financial officer for Alex Partners, a global consulting firm. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you.
And finally, Liz Cheung-Gaffney. Liz is Columbia College 1998, University of Notre Dame Law School 01, former member of Columbia Lions women's soccer team, and 2016 inductee of the Columbia Athletics Hall of Fame. Liz is currently the GC of Long Island University. So again, so excited to be here with all of you. Welcome to everyone who is attending this awesome event. I thoroughly enjoyed my time meeting with some of you at the pre-reception and just really, really honored and excited to be here. This is such a timely conversation, and I have to first start by thanking, thanks to the Columbia-Barnard Athletic Consortium, we get this opportunity to participate in this Beyond the Game discussion. This is the culmination of Women's History Month, and as we celebrate the 50th anniversary of Title IX, I'm looking forward to the conversation. I'd also be remiss if I didn't also shout out and congratulate the women's team. They're probably somewhere getting tuned up for the game tonight. This entire community, this entire campus, I can feel the energy, so congrats to all of you, and definitely the women's team on their run in the WNIT this evening. I've mentioned Title IX already a few times, and just for anyone who is unfamiliar, this was a federal civil rights law that was passed as part of the Education Amendments of 1972, prohibiting sex-based discrimination in any school or other education program that receives funding from the federal government. But I think we all widely know how much of an impact this legislation has had on women's sports. And as a former collegiate athlete myself, I'm sure it had an impact on each of you personally. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about that. And I'll start with you, Philippa. Can you share with us your personal influence that Title IX had on you as a student athlete?
Well, first of all, things have changed dramatically. I arrived here as a Barnard Bear, and it was great. I loved it. I had a lot of support from the Barnard administration. And in fact, there's some Barnard alums here tonight who really paved the way for the start of the Barnard athletics program. Valerie Mason, who's here, we started with 3 teams, I think, in the 70s. And I think when I arrived here, it was like 8 teams, and now I think we're up to 15. I mean, I think when I was here, we didn't even have a women's soccer team until like late in maybe my junior or senior year. I also remember, when I first started at Barnard, we got up at 6:30 in the morning to practice because the men had the better practice times. And of course, all of that changed. When Ellen Futter created the Athletics Consortium, I think based on Title IX, we had lots more resources for our athletes. And, we went from being a D3 program to a D1 program, which was great. You know, we had some tough times, you know, we had some losses, but, you know, it was a time I'll never, ever forget. And I think I felt an obligation to really help women in the future. I could see, you know, we didn't have the resources we should have had. We never had assistant coaches. We never had funding for a spring break trip until my senior year. You know, I knew what we needed to do, and I was a captain, and so I was on the undergraduate athletics council. And it was great to have a seat at the table, you know, with all the other athletes. And I think that experience really led me to be active as an alum. And I was the first female president of the Varsity C Club. And, you know, as things progressed, Lisa and I and Donna, who's here somewhere, created the Women's Leadership Council because we really felt that women had to step up and support the athletics program, and we've raised over $4.5 million so far. And so, you know, Title IX was just a great thing for me, for my college experience. My best friends are my teammates, my other friends from other teams, and I just felt like a duty to continue to do what Title IX did, so it was great for me.
That's fantastic. And I think every athlete in the room can attest to how important practice times are. So, you know, I identify with, you know, what that means, but I just think it's amazing that, you know, you've chosen to give back and to continue to improve things here. Lisa, same question. What was the personal influence, the impact that Title IX you think had on your, you know, life as a student athlete?
Sure. Well, first I'll back up a bit and just say being able to compete in sports starting in junior high and high school had just an incredible influence on my life. I mean, it taught me how to win. It taught me how to perform under pressure, and that was even before I read Sion's research. It taught me how to lose and pick myself back up. It taught me how to manage my time. It taught me how to feel good in my body at ages when maybe I didn't feel so good about myself. And I really loved sports, not just playing sports, but cheering on sports. And so I'm enormously grateful that I did grow up when I did, because when I was 5 years old, Title IX didn't exist. So I really am part of the first generation that had that benefit to really have a wealth of opportunities in high school and college. At Columbia, I was basically a walk-on. I think I got a call after I was admitted.
I was a walk-on too.
And was part of an amazing track team. Many of my best friends as well from that experience. And I liked the discipline of having practice and meets and fitting in my courses and my job. And I had a job on campus and my other activities. And I think for a lot of athletes, you can relate to the fact that the busier you are, the better you do. The one semester I didn't run track was my lowest GPA by far. And I don't think that's, you know, random. I think it's true. When you're busy, you have to be focused, you have to be organized. And being a part of a track team really was key in my success as a collegian. And after graduating Columbia, which I loved, I really did stay involved. And one of the ways I stayed involved was cheering on our team. So while I ran track, I consider myself a super fan of all of our teams. And one of the things, we actually do have a slide here which shows the growth in sports at Columbia, if we can show that. And as Philippa said, I mean, it took 116 years for us to add women's soccer after men's soccer. But look at this trajectory of women's sports. And when you think of not just the number of sports, but the competitiveness of these teams, winning Ivy championships, regional championships, national championships, we have Olympians. Our women have really come on strong. And if I could just show one more slide, we have an embedded turbo booster coming, because as Peter and Sion both alluded to, the representation among our Barnard students is at a very steep trajectory. And so this is an area where the Columbia Lions have a huge competitive advantage. If you think of the aggregate of our undergrads across Barnard, our School of Engineering and Applied Science, and Columbia College, well, actually, we have more women to compete at the highest level. So I am super excited about this. And when you think of the global appeal of being in New York City, it's not surprising that a couple of our starters on tonight's basketball team are from Spain and Australia, respectively, which I don't think some other schools could compete to get that kind of student athlete. So sports has been big for me. Just one last thing, my fellow trustee, Rolando Acosta, is here tonight. He was a star baseball player for the Lions. And one of the things that we both note is that we really like a lot of diversity among the trustees, diversity in terms of generation, in terms of ethnicity, in terms of career, geography, what school we went to at Columbia. But there's one area we don't want diversity, which is we have a high representation of jocks. And why is that? Because the athletes tend to be very loyal and generous alums. And so we hope to continue that on the board today. We have alums from crew, from golf, two from baseball, myself from track and field, and I expect that we'll continue that for many years to come. Hopefully the percentage of athletes will only grow. And then one shout out before I pass the baton is just to thank the coaches and athletes that are here tonight. And also, I have to thank Jackie Blackcat, who is just the guru. Where is she? Jackie is a big part of the success of not just women athletes, but women and men athletes over the last, 35 years at Columbia. And I personally feel an enormous debt, and she's a tremendous role model to me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Lisa. So much of what you said resonated with me. When I think about all the attributes, all the things that I've taken with me from athletics, like we're singing the same song, we could be a choir. And also thanks for the stats. I think, showing the progress and showing the positive trends is important so that we continue to grow for certain. Liz, we're of a similar generation of athletes. Can you talk about your personal influence, especially because at the point when you played, Title IX had already been in existence for nearly 30 years. Can you share with us a little bit?
For sure. I think Title IX, I think we were of this first generation where Title IX had really gotten going, and then all the college programs, especially for soccer, really exploded at a time when I was coming up. And the recruiting was just at its sort of nascent stages. And compared to what it is now, it's a total machine now. But back then, it was sort of like, wait, I could keep playing, and it could, we were having talks with coaches about how it could help you get into school. And, I came from an immigrant family where they weren't sure that I should keep playing in high school. They were like, what are you doing? And so the idea that you could keep playing was totally new. But I think to that point, it just opened so many doors. It opened so many possibilities for my generation. And it really gave us all an opportunity to be leaders in our respective sports. And that was, I think, new in our generation, where it was always something where you could play in high school, but then I think it really gave us a platform to excel. And I think a lot of us use that platform, and because it was a lot like muscle memory. You really it really gave you a sense of achievement, and then you could carry that over to other parts of your life, especially academics, and ultimately it carries over to your career, and you're just you have those high expectations that I think you've started to set for yourself, as you've grown along the way.
So super true. You mentioned the word leadership, and I've been fortunate to be in a career path that's a direct result of Title IX. Working in the WNBA, I could say with fervor, I don't think the WNBA would exist if it had not been for Title IX. I'd love to talk a little bit about all of your careers. You're all accomplished in varying careers right now, and I want to dig a little bit deeper. I'll start with you, Lisa. You serve on the board here at Columbia. In addition to being a CFO, you've had an impressive career in finance and consulting. Is this coincidence, or do you correlate your career directly to the effects of being an athlete? Do you directly correlate it to Title IX?
So it's interesting. I don't know that I would have correlated it to Title IX until more recently, but 100% athletics played a big part. If I think of the networking I did at Columbia, my first practice interview was with an incredible alum, Jerry Sherwin, who just passed away. The networking I did with other alums, and frankly, working on Wall Street, where the language of the trading floor is all about sports. It's, are we in the red zone? Take it to the finish line. Take one for the team. Don't drop the ball. I mean, the percentage of people in leadership roles that played a sport and that love sports is extremely high. And then you look at it in terms of gender, I believe 80% of women in corporate executive positions played a sport. And I think, again, it's all the things we talk about. It's knowing how to be a good teammate. It's knowing how to deal with adversity. It's picking yourself up when you fail. It's liking competition. It's wanting to win. It's striving for more. And I definitely think being an athlete helped me and was key to my success. I did laugh when I was leading capital markets for Bank of America Merrill Lynch, and I thought down the hall, so I ran track at Columbia, the next 6 people down to the other corner office were all former college athletes as well. And I don't think that was a coincidence. I will also say something that while I was a sprinter, I do have a conscious bias. I like to hire endurance athletes. Diana will like this, and Dan might like this, because they know how to suffer. So I did very well hiring. I hired one guy who swam the mile. Like, I didn't even need to interview him, right? I mean, come on. And he came to Columbia from North Dakota. I'm like, you're done. And he was amazing. And I hired several Ivy cross-country champions, but yeah, so even though I'm a sprinter, I like people that I know will run through walls, literally.
One thing is for certain, you could never hire me. I struggled through the mile for my entire career. Philippa, I'll bounce over to you. First, can you talk a little bit about Launch Break? Currently, you're the founder of Launch Break. I'd love to understand your thoughts. One, the connection to your career, but also being a trailblazer as an early consortium athlete. Like, what's that meant to you professionally?
Yeah, so being an early consortium athlete, was great, and I think I learned a lot from being forced to deal with resilience when we lost some matches. Also, it gave me a really good work ethic, because to go from D3 to D1, you really had to put in a lot of hours on the court and in conditioning. And so I think those qualities were really important for my career. I was really active as an alum after I graduated. And I think having those leadership positions gave me confidence. When I went to Columbia Business School, 30% of my class was female, and I worked at Citibank for years before Launch Break, and I was in the aviation industry, and that was heavily male dominated. And so I was always used to, having to stand up for myself, and instead of being intimidated, I was like, women have to have a place here. And I really wanted to mentor women, and I tried to hire female associates when I was at Citibank. And now recently I'm turning to be an entrepreneur, we'll see, with Launch Break, which is trying to help underprivileged students and college students with the job search process. And Columbia has been really helpful, and Barnard, in terms of providing advice for me. And I just think I developed confidence from being an athlete. I had a lot of leadership positions. I developed a great work ethic, teamwork, everything that everyone else really said. And, I love giving back to Barnard too. I'm on the board of Barnard, and I helped to found the Athena Center, which promotes leadership for women. And so I just want to keep continuing everything that Title IX gave all of us. And I'm very happy about it all.
There's a theme here, empowered women. You continue to empower other women, and I think that's the really beautiful part about it. In the same way that we play sports and we continue to play sports later in life, like there's this continuum. I think that's just super, super special. Liz, I'll move over to you. Can you talk about the impact of being a soccer player that molded you from a career standpoint as well? Maybe perhaps led you into law, maybe perhaps led you into academia.
For sure, yeah. I think being a lawyer all the hard work that went into kind of training and reaching the level that I reached, both as a youth player and in college, I think that just, again, that trains your muscles, and then you have a lot of muscle memory to draw on when you're later on in your career. And I think being a lawyer, and especially a litigator, there's always that competitive edge, right, that you need as a litigator that I had. And then also to just be able to hold your own, whether you're in a group, in a courtroom, or you're, largely in the upper echelons. Unfortunately, it's largely male dominated, and I think you have to be able to, bring it. You have to be able to present, and you have to be able to hold your ground and just believe. And I think having played a sport really taught me and gave me the confidence to just believe in myself and my own ability to achieve. And I think that just goes a long way. I think part of it is just believing you belong there. I think sports gives you a lot of that.
Completely agree. I'm actually going to go to some questions, which I think we are still collecting at this point. If anyone has additional questions, you can write them in. But I'm going to pose this, I guess I'll for anyone, but also to Liz, since it's a soccer question. Women's soccer has made great strides in the area recently with the $22 million agreement with the U.S. Soccer Federation, but salaries for other women's professional athletes continue to lag. Do you have any thoughts on continuing gaps in pay equity for women athletes?
Yeah, I think that settlement was a huge breakthrough in recognizing the innate inequalities of what the women athletes were struggling with. And I think part of that is just, just acknowledging that it needed to be fixed was a huge thing that people just took for granted a lot of times. And just, just speaking with people were kind of like, oh, I didn't realize that it needed to be equalized. Talking to a lot of just kind of casual observers of women's sports, the women's soccer team is so much more successful than the men's team, and a lot of people didn't realize they were not getting paid the same. And so I think just the perception of it is important to change. And with the new Angels FC, that team, the new team in LA, there's a lot of really powerful women behind that team. And so I think momentum is building in women's soccer. Also, you have the Barclays League in England that is so great now, and I love watching it. So I just think as the public consciousness becomes more aware for women's sports, I think it would just have like a waterfall effect, I hope, in other sports.
Yeah, I mean, certainly tennis has made some big strides, thanks to Venus Williams, Billie Jean King. It's really great. I mean, we still have further to go, but at least on the majors, the women get paid the same as the men, which is great.
So it's interesting, there were a number of mavericks that pushed to make that happen, but also now, if you look at attendance at the major tournaments, there are at least as many people for the women as the men. So I do have a call to action to everyone here, which is part of the way we get women paid more is by having more people in the stands. So I know we're all going to go and support the Liberty. But not just the Liberty. How many of you have been to a NWSL game and cheered on our women's professional soccer team? Not as convenient as the Liberty, but still right in the New York, New Jersey area. And all of our women's teams. And so we all need to buy tickets, buy season tickets, buy the merch, go support them. And that will be the best way to support the financial success of those teams and the players that compete so hard. And I think Philippa mentioned the Women's Leadership Council, but part of the catalyst to join that, to start that, was that 12 or 13 years ago, when we asked the then athletics director, how much do we raise every year for women's sports, it was $50,000 across all sports. And it was well over, this is just annual giving. And now we do over 1 million a year.
That's incredible.
And
And
we're
every
still going to
team.
keep going, especially after we win the NIT. It's going to be a whole different zip code. But we need to support
Women need to
sports,
support
whether
women.
at the collegiate level or the professional level or you name it. So.
And then also, I'm a mother of triplet boys, and they know a ton about women's sports, and it wouldn't be any other way, you know. They'll kill me for giving them a shout out, but yes.
We love them.
It's so super true. I mean, I live this every single day. In fact, I read the question and was like, yeah, I get asked this every time I'm on a panel. But I think your point is so well received. Progress matters for one. When the athletes themselves advocate for themselves and make demands, it matters. Support matters, you know, which I agree. Thank you for the shout out. May 7th. First game, New York Liberty, Barclays Center. I'm gonna move on to the next question. Here is Kim Ng, a former college softball player at University of Chicago, was named GM of the MLB Florida Marlins in November 2020. The first woman GM of a men's sports team in North American history, and the first Asian American GM in MLB history. Any thoughts on how to increase the representation of women in major league sports leadership?
Well, I have another thank you. Sunil, are you still here? Okay, so are you here, Sunil? Back there? Oh, he stepped out. Okay, well, Professor Galai, for those of you taking all econ, I know the soccer team, he tapped me to be on the board of U.S. Soccer, and I'm one of the 3 independent board members. Candidly, there were no women on the board that weren't independent board members because the grassroots leadership of the youth and adult were all men. But the independents provided a way to have women on that board, including a mentor to a couple of you. Val Ackerman was on the board, and Donna Shalala before me. And now the president of U.S. Soccer is a woman and former national team star, Cindy Parlow Cone. And I just think women and men giving opportunity for more women to have leadership roles. And while I don't have the experience to be a general manager of a baseball team, that would be a dream job, right?
Oh, we run the Mets together.
So when the Mets call,
That's
keep me in
right.
mind.
Me too.
Yeah.
Keep you in mind. I actually don't think we have any other questions here, so I'm gonna toss one out for anyone on the panel. What would you say is needed? What would you like to see? We're now celebrating 50 years of Title IX. What would you like to see, or what would you deem progress over the next 50 years?
I think, you know, higher attendance at games. I mean, more successful professional female sports leagues. You know, I have a niece who plays soccer, and I know sports are really important to girls growing up now, and I think we need to continue that trend. And I think, yeah, just a lot more spaces for women to compete collegiately and professionally.
Oh, I had a much simpler answer.
What's that?
300 Barnard varsity athletes. I think it's doable.
Why not?
What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's so many ways that women can do more, I think, for women. You know, I think hiring associates that are women, and also encouraging the next generation. Like, you know, I've got a daughter that plays a lot of sports as well, and I think creating that healthy environment. I think now youth sports has become so different than what it used to be, but I think trying to keep girls in it. I think a lot of times, you know, it's go, go, go all the time, and sometimes you hit a burnout point. And so I think it's important for us as women to be nurturing the next generation in like a very healthy way, instead of this, you know, pressure cooker that sometimes it's inevitable. So I think just keeping girls in it, making sure they still play and stay engaged, and that's going to be, you know, they want to go to games, they want to go, you know, they want to participate, and I think that will just lead to more and more demand. I
love that, and I completely agree, and I think it starts at a young age. Would love to talk a little bit about allyship. There's been so much positive change here just in learning from all of you and spending time upstairs. So many great things have happened here. What has allyship, and maybe it was people in leadership roles, but maybe it was men who really spoke up and advocated. Would love to hear more about your experiences here.
Well, I know that early on the consortium, there was a men's alum, Connie Maniani, who hired a lot of female athletes into Solomon Brothers, and it was really great to see some of the men step up. I thought that was wonderful, and I'm sure there's some other male alums who really helped out in the early days of the consortium. I don't know if you...
No, definitely. And I mentioned Jerry Sherwin, who was an amazing networker over a 50-year period as an alum. I think a lot of people reached out and helped bring along the women and the men, and it's something that I still enjoy doing. We just had a track alumni event because we hosted the Ivy Championship for indoor track, and we were making connections across probably 40 years of alums, and it was just so much fun meeting new people and feeling that connectivity because of a shared passion.
Yeah, I think there are so many pivotal people along the way, especially in Columbia sports. My coach, Kevin McCarthy, was an amazing mentor, and it was his first year and my first year. And so that was really very significant for both of us as we were all building the program. I'm trying to think, Jerry Sherwin too was a huge fan. All those guys, they did so much for the program, and I think we're really kind of seeing the legacy of that in a lot of spaces. So
super important, and apparently I didn't know how to hit refresh before. There are other questions. So I will return back to the questions that have been sent in. This is submitted by Christina, a Barnard alumna. What advice would you give girls who are worried that they're not good enough to continue with their sports as they progress, particularly when changing schools?
I think it's important to have a mentor who you can talk to, who will kind of give you support. And I think it's important never to give up and to just really believe in yourself and have a support network. I think it's really helpful to have other women out there guiding you.
And to the extent you want to compete in that sport, you could find a school where you could compete at that level. I mean, we're talking about an incredibly competitive basketball team tonight. Less than 10 years ago, I think we were the single worst women's basketball team in Division I. We had that moment in time. That team helped build where we are today, but if you really want to compete, let's say at the varsity high school or collegiate level, there is a school where you can compete, or alternatively, intramurals can be incredible. And depending on the school, intramural could be like the varsity somewhere else. I had a nephew, for example, who played ultimate frisbee. And it wasn't a varsity sport, but they were traveling all over the country. They were competing at a very high level. I even competed at the intramural swim meet here at Columbia, true story, just for kicks, 50-meter backstroke champion. So there's a lot of different ways to get involved. And also, it's interesting, certain sports have a lot of walk-ons. So if you look at crew and some other teams, people that didn't do it growing up, and I know I met a bunch of our amazing archers, some of them have only been at it 5-6 years. So you may not be in the right sport. I was actually a tennis player until the season switched, and I tried out track and actually was better in track. So if you want to compete, there's something that you definitely can compete in.
Diversity in sports, switching it up, but mostly I would actually say to just love the game. That was the thing. I wasn't very good, transparently, when I played collegiately, but I loved it. My teammates used to make fun of me because I loved practice more than games, because it was in my heart, I needed to play. Great advice. Another question for the youth. This is from a Columbia parent. My daughter has a hard time when she loses. How did you develop your strategies and techniques to cope with losing? Unless you never lost.
I definitely lost.
It's a tough question to ask, alpha athletes. I think there's merit in losing. There's a lot of value in losing because, how you act when you lose, are you going to congratulate the other team? We stress a lot with our kids that you have to be gracious all the time, but I also think just letting that feeling sit with you, maybe that you didn't win that day, and using that feeling for the next time, and really like letting it sit and just saying, oh, this really stinks, and using that for next time. I think that's probably the best way.
And I think like looking inside yourself and thinking, okay, can I improve on something? Like maybe take a couple of days to kind of get over it, but then like kind of take look inside yourself and see how you can train and be better for next time.
Fantastic. Another question. This is from Grace Shahid, Barnard and Columbia track and field athlete. I would love to hear the panel's thoughts on how to expand the Columbia-Barnard Athletics Consortium. What expansions would you like to see? How do you envision Barnard athletes continuing to get opportunities and exposure? And also, how do you see changes in the NIL playing a role here?
Well, that's good. Well, I think, Sihan has done an amazing job in helping. I think the coaches now know a lot more about Barnard, so I think that helps with recruiting. And I think even when the tour guides give tours at Barnard, I think that they really know about athletics now. So I think we're doing a lot to really bring Barnard athletes in, and I would love to see, every team to have a significant amount of Barnard athletes. Gotcha, NIL stuff, we haven't really thought about that. That would be something impressive to do for women.
Well, I think the NIL it's just started, but I think there's so much room for it to grow in so many different ways. We heard a family friend who had used her social media platform to raise money. And so she raised, I forget how much money she raised and donated it to her local favorite charity. So I feel like there's a lot of space for this to really take off in a positive way. I think everyone's a little bit not sure about how it's going to work out. But it'll be interesting and exciting to see where it goes.
Same here, and I think the one thing is that the opportunity is there, and from the early returns, women's sports at especially some of the bigger schools are leading. So I can't wait for that waterfall to really be effective for everyone. Another question here is a really smart question from Julia, a Barnard senior. What advice do you have for students graduating who want to work in sports and don't know where to start?
Well, they know the president of the Liberty now.
Hopefully we met upstairs, Julia. I think there's so much opportunity, and even opportunities that weren't available when I was in school, for networking, for reaching out to people via LinkedIn research and asking for informational interviews, attending career fairs, attending events at games, both professionally and collegiately. I think, you are the company you keep. My colleague Alicia is here with me. We intentionally are seeking former student athletes. We are intentionally seeking diverse candidates when we're looking for interns, when we're looking for entry-level positions. And I think that's important work, but I'll say it one more time, it's intentional work, because we know what kind of values, we know what type of work ethic exists in that realm. So, I was timid to put that I was an athlete on my resume initially, and I had a mentor say to me, no, people should know that you were a 4-year athlete. You just have an understanding of what has been endured, what you're willing to put in, what you're willing to commit. So I think you can get your stars never too early. I'll end by saying that. Anyone else have comments there?
Just to use your school alumni services, because they hopefully know, other women or men who work in athletics and sports.
Well, I have a piece of advice you could use, whether for sports or other things. people don't use the mail much anymore. I don't mean email, I mean like a piece of paper. And so if you had targeted, these are my 20 dream jobs, working for the Liberty or working for, the soccer club in LA or whoever, if you were to write the person you want to work with a letter saying why you want to work with them and what you could bring to the organization, I think you'd be surprised that you will get an opportunity to talk to someone about a job. So it's a little bit of a shots on goal.
Snail mail.
Bring it back to a sports metaphor. But if you wrote 20 letters to the places you want to work, you're going to get 5 interviews.
I couldn't agree more. Snail mail is now shock and awe, right?
Last question.
Last question here. What do you see as the responsibility of this young generation of athletes who are recent grads? That is from Anne Murray, head lacrosse coach.
Great.
To do everything you can to support the next generation, hire them for jobs, recruit them, and increase attendance at your games, develop a mentorship program, so we can all kind of take care of each other.
Yeah, and continue to support our programs, whether by showing up and cheering our teams on. If you can give financially, that's great too. I mean, one of my dreams is that all of our women's coaching positions will be endowed. Now that's going to take many decades, but we got to just. It's cost me a lot, Peter, but we're gonna get to it, right?
Yep.
Well, I absolutely appreciate everyone's time and attention today. I'd like to thank Philippa, Lisa, Liz for your time and energy. I'd like to thank Peter Pilling, President Bylock, and all of you for being an amazing and attentive audience, for sending in amazing questions. And I'd be happy to come back anytime and spend time with you here. I'd be happier if you joined me in Brooklyn at Barclays Center this summer. Are we on time for the game?
Yes. 20 minutes to tip off. Let's go.
Let's go. That was great.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
That was so fun.